Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says pointing the finger at parliamentary scrutiny. This article speaks about laws passed by the government which has led to serious confrontation between the government as well as the parties affected. Let us take some of the examples. We have the Citizenship Amendment Act, labor reforms, farm acts. In all these cases, the affected parties like the farmers, the laborers have come in direct confrontation with the government. These laws, which are passed by the government, has evoked a large-scale protest which was not anticipated, predicted, and even has taken the government by surprise as well. In this particular backdrop, can we say that the whole process of legislative management in the parliament has caused some lapses when it comes to its actual execution? So what we are discussing here is with respect to the parliamentary committees. So in this particular article, our focus would be about the lapses that which has taken place in the parliament and in specific reference to the parliamentary committees. When you look at the lawmaking body in India, what is the lawmaking body? It is the parliament. The parliament, which happens to be a legislative body, also has something called as the parliamentary committees. So what are these parliamentary committees? These are the committees where all the bills will be referred to, and these committees will scrutinize whether that particular bill is right or wrong. In case there are any suggestions that has to be given, the parliamentary committee will also make all these recommendations, and the same will also be put right in front of the parliament. So what does the parliament do? It is a legislating making body. It also has something called as the committees. The committees will scrutinize this particular bill, and in case there is a requirement of any recommendation, the same will be given to the parliament. But we have something called as the rules of the house. What are these rules of the house? We have two important houses. One is the Lok Sabha, the other is the Rajya Sabha. They do have the rules that they effectively have to make sure that there is comfortable effective use of the parliamentary procedures. When it comes to the Lok Sabha or when it comes to the Rajya Sabha, we also have the presiding officers. It is these presiding officers in Lok Sabha, which happens to be the speaker. In Rajya Sabha, it happens to be the chairman of the Rajya Sabha. It is these presiding officers who decide whether that particular bill has to be referred to a committee. So the minute they follow the rules of the procedure as laid out in that particular house, they put this particular bill into a committee. So what does the committee do? The committee will take up this particular bill, will bring all the stakeholders into picture. They consult number of experts in that particular domain and ultimately make all the suggestions that which is required for the effective implementation of that bill. So what will happen here? They will have an elaborate consultation, and this consultation is what will bring better out of that particular bill. What exactly happens when we comes to the parliamentary committee? Most of these parliamentary committees works on the principle of non-party manner. What do we mean by non-party manner? When you see the Lok Sabha proceedings or when you see the Rajya Sabha proceedings, what do you actually witness? You have the house, you also have the people from the representative party, that is the political party which is formed the government. Then you also have the opposition as well. Because we are all seeing it, there might be certain scenarios where the opposition might actually oppose every good move made by the government, or the government may not even respect the views of the opposition as well. But when it comes to the parliamentary committees, it does not work that way. Because of the representation of multiple parties, there is no hue and cry. Instead, what goes into this particular debate and discussions is the merit of that particular bill. When it comes to the parliamentary committees, you have most of the parties which are represented in a parliamentary committee. So they work in a non-partisan manner. What becomes important is whether to see that particular bill is right or wrong. Will there have to be any updates? Will there have to be changes? Why? Because the prospect of the country comes into picture rather than party lines as shown in the general proceedings. So in this parliamentary committee, what we actually witness is that irrespective of the political party, it might be BJP, it might be Congress or any other party, they all work in an inclusive non-party manner. Another important factor is when it comes to this particular committee, there are no application of the anti-defection law. So the anti-defection law does not work when it comes to the parliamentary committee, and at the same time these committee meetings are since closed door and people do not know what exactly is happening. They are also not bound by the party whip as well. So in this particular backdrop, most of the political parties represented in this parliamentary committee work on the principle of consensus. So this is above all the party lines. Why? Because the nation is put forward and party politics does not step in when it comes to this form of parliamentary democracy. So what is the importance of this particular parliamentary committee? When you look at the previous bills, we have number of examples as well. Let's take the example of the protection of plant varieties and farmers rights bill, that which the government had initiated back in the year 1999. What was this bill all about? The bill was meant to develop new varieties of plants, protect the rights of the farmers as well as the breeders. In this particular case, it was referred to a joint committee of the parliament. So what do? They find out if there is a legal loop in that particular legislation. They come up with recommendations, and when you look at most of the legislations, you have something called as the definitions in that particular legislation. So all the loopholes that was prevalent as part of this legislation was refined, was fine-tuned, and the same was submitted to the parliament, and as a result what we have is beautiful legislation in the form of the protection of plant varieties and the farmers rights act, which was produced in the year 2001. So what we have to remember is that whenever a bill is passed to the parliamentary committee, what they will do is refining, fine tuning with respect to that legislation. Let us take another example. We have the siege bill of the year 2004. According to this bill, when it was sent to the parliamentary committee brought number of stakeholders on a common platform. Since it is about seeds, it also wanted to check with the agricultural university. It spoke to the agricultural research institutions, national and the state level seed corporations, private seed agencies, and the non-governmental organizations which were working for the interests of the farmers as well. So what we realize is that when such a bill was given to the parliamentary committee, they bring all the stakeholders, the experts, and take their perspectives and views as well. So what is happening here? Tomorrow that particular stakeholder, it might be the farmer or people who might be affected by it, will not come onto the streets. Why? Because their viewpoints are also considered by the parliamentary committees. So the seeds bill in this particular case had referred the bill to the Standing Committee on Agriculture, and they brought all the stakeholders on a common platform. Then we also have the Lokpal and Lokayuktas bill. This was initially referred to the Lok Sabha Select Committee. Eventually, it was also referred to the Select Committee of the Rajya Sabha as well. What is happening here? There are two sets of committees which is having a vigilant eyes on the provisions of the bill. So what we will have is a refined, tuned, and the best legislation possible when it comes to passing of that bill. But what is the major issue right now? When it comes to the present scenario, what we are actually witnessing is that most of these bills are not being sent to the parliamentary committee. So the major problem and the author voices is that most of these bills earlier was supposed to be passed to the parliamentary committee, but right now very few bills are being referred to the parliamentary committee, and as a result what we are actually witnessing is strikes by the affected parties. It can be the farmers, it can be laborers, says the author in this particular case. Now you might ask me a question. Should every bill be sent to a parliamentary committee? The answer is a strict no. Why? Let's say for example, there is a small change that has to be introduced in a particular legislation. If there is a small change or a small amendment with respect to one of the legislations, then there is a discretion that is given to the presiding officer. The speaker or the chairman may either send it, or they need not have to send this particular bill to the parliamentary committee. But if it is having a major issue, if the stakeholder will get impacted in such a scenario, the discretionary power that which is given to the presiding officer will have to make effective use of it and ultimately deliver the goods for the country by referring this particular bill to the parliamentary committee. Since it was not done in the present scenario with respect to the farm bills, That is why the farmers are agitating against the government, says the author in this case. Now, what we have to focus is the previous precedent. When you go back to the history book, we have the British Parliament, which has been using this very idea of parliamentary committees ever since the 16th century. We have the Central Legislative Assembly, which was the parliament for the British India, which had also come up with similar instances as well. Let's take the example of Committee on Petitions relating to bills, Select Committees of Amendments of Standing Orders, and Select Committee on Bills. In all these cases, if there was a legislation that was being drafted, the same was referred to one of the committees to scrutinize, find out the loopholes, refine, retune, and come up with changes and recommendations to the parliament. And finally, there have been previous instances as well where there was informal consultations that was taking place between the government which has drafted that particular legislation, and the opposition was also taken into confidence as well. So according to the author, in the present scenario, that is also being missing, and that happens to be a major concern and issue, says the author of this article. In fact, when you look at the ministers who have been drafting this particular legislation, reading out this particular legislation, they are generally reluctant to send their bills to the committees as well. In looking into all these issues, what we actually witness is there has been a major shortcoming with respect to the management of legislative business in the parliament. So the author in this particular case says that parliamentary scrutiny, parliamentary committees looking into a particular bill is a very important factor. If it is being violated in the near future, this can be a recipe for disaster. Why? Because all the irrelevant aspects might be introduced in this particular legislation, and the stakeholders will be impacted, and ultimately they will be on the roads, and this might disturb the peace and tranquility, and the call for Bandh will also be an economic impact, says the author in this case. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Maduro's win. What is the context? We have the parliamentary elections which were held in the country of Venezuela. We have President Nicolas Maduro's party and his allies who won the Venezuela's legislative elections for the National Assembly. So what is this National Assembly? National Assembly is nothing but the legislative body in the country of Venezuela which makes the laws, passes the laws, and also approves the government budget. Before we understand this article further, we have to understand a bit of the background. We have President Nicolas Maduro, who was first elected in 2013 after the death of his socialist mentor Hugo Chavez. So during this particular period, as he took over the presidency of this particular country, the country was in economic doldrums. The economy was not doing good. It was in a complete fall and a bleak environment. That was because of the socialist type of environment and political ideology which was prevalent in Venezuela. What was happening in Venezuela? Because they had a socialist ideology, they started excessively spending on the welfare programs. They had poorly managed facilities. Government was even willing to print extra money as well. Why? Because they wanted to make sure that the poor in the country vote for this political party, and at the same time they also fixed a minimum wage which went on increasing over a period of time. So because of the socialist nature of the government, they wanted to appease the people, and the economics in the country was not keeping a check in this particular period, and as a result what it resulted is in the hyperinflation. And because of inflation, what we have is excessive shortage food, medicines, and other basic amenities. So according to United Nations Refugee Agency, because there was inflation, because the economy was not going good, there were currently about 4.5 million refugees and migrants who had to move from Venezuela to other countries, all because of the socialistic policies of the government. This is when the United States of America steps into picture. So what does the United States of America do? The United States of America is assumed to be a global protector. Wherever there is an issue, United States of America immediately steps in. Since Venezuela is one of the South American countries very close by to the United States of America, United States of America feels that this is because of the socialist policies of the government which was led by Nicolas Maduro. Maduro. Why does United States of America step into picture? That is because of two reasons. What are those two reasons? One is because of the ideological perspective. The other is because of concerns as well. What is the ideological perspective? We know for the fact that United States of America believes in the capitalistic principle of economics, but what we have here is the socialistic principles of the economy. So it feels that there is an ideological backlash between Venezuela and United States of America in order to make sure that there is another government which is supported by the United States of America. It wanted to remove the regime which is headed by Nicolas Maduro. So one of the important implications is that there was a direct conflict with the ideology. The other reasons why United States of America also imposed sanctions on Venezuela is because of the Venezuelan government not working for the people of the country. When you look at United States of America, it feels that the people of Venezuela are suffering because of the bad socialistic policies of Venezuela. Business transactions are not working well. People are leaving the particular country. They are into some other country. There is extreme migrant crisis. There is refugee crisis as well. This can also have spillover effects to other countries in South America. And as a result, out of concern, it also imposes sanctions on the Venezuelan government. So what were these sanctions? Freezing all the Venezuelan assets in the United States of America and also barring the transactions of the Venezuelan government with other major economies as well. So the United States of America sanctions were designed to ensure that Mr. Nicolas Maduro is immediately removed from that particular position, and there is another person that which United States of America wanted to appoint, and that was the head of the National Assembly back then, which happens to be Juan Guaido. So what is the major issue right now? They wanted to make sure that socialist principal leader, that is Nicolas Maduro, is immediately removed and he is superseded by a person appointed by the United States of America, and that happens to be Juan Guaido. So they wanted to make sure that there is a kind of a civil war against the existing regime of Nicolas Maduro, and ultimately there is replacement of Juan Guaido. Now let us focus on the impact of its economy with special emphasis to India. Why? Because whatever happens world over, it is India and our perspective that we have to look at. When you look at the impact, India was almost taking about 28% of Venezuela's crude oil exports in the year 2018. Now when you go back to the relationship between India and Venezuela, one of the important companies from India which was importing a lot of oil was Reliance Industries Limited, which was importing as much as 80% of the oil from Venezuela. But what exactly happens? Reliance also has tie-ups when it comes to shale gas in United States of America. Let's say in the state of Texas, or let's say in the state of Pennsylvania. In all these states, Reliance Industries had also made heavy investments as well. So when United States of America imposed sanctions on Venezuela, most of the countries like India, Japan did not have any transactions with Venezuela, and in fact companies which are also having transactions with Venezuela did not continue with its transactions. So this led to bleeding of the economy of Venezuela. Naturally, this will mean when there is excessive sanctions imposed by United States of America, the economy of Venezuela is in deep crisis. While this was happening, we also have to focus on other country as well, and that happens to be Iran. What was happening with Iran? United States of America had also imposed sanctions on Iran as well. United States of America had also imposed sanctions on Venezuela as well. So both these countries come together. Why? Because as we know, there is a clear cut policy: when you have an enemy's enemy, become friends with him. So enemy of United States of America currently in South America is Venezuela, and when it comes to West Asia, Iran is the enemy of United States of America. So what we have is Iran and Venezuela both coming together to take on United States of America. So what we have is Iran supporting Venezuela indirectly. Why? One is because in case there is a regime change that happens in Venezuela, the entire focus of United States of America will now fall on Iran, which Iran did not want. So what it does, it started supporting the Venezuelan government headed by Nicolas Maduro. This is one aspect, and at the same time, Iran and Venezuela also feel that they are an independent sovereign country. They can have all type of transactions, they can have all types of combinations of transactions. If United States of America is putting any type of pressure, both these countries will not be bogged down by the pressure of United States of America. This is when Iran starts exporting oil to the Venezuela. Now you might ask me a question. Yes, United States of America is putting pressure to Iran as well. Yes, United States of America is putting pressure on Venezuela as well, but we also know for the fact that Venezuelan economy is only based on oil. Now why is that Iran is exporting oil to Venezuela? That is because most of the contractors, or in fact the tools and mechanisms that is required for extracting oil, is currently not present in Venezuela. The import parts as well as the higher contractors and the investments made by couple of countries like Reliance is currently not present in Venezuela, and as a result they are importing oil as well. We also have the state oil company called as Petroleas de Venezuelas. This particular company was actually producing about 1.3 billion barrels per day, but now what we have is the underinvestment, because most of the companies are not investing right now in Venezuela because of the sanctions imposed by United States of America. And as a result, what we have is the shortage of fuel because of the import parts not being present, higher contractors not being present, under investment within the government, and under investment by the private companies. All of this has resulted in the shortage of fuel in the Venezuela. And with time, what we have is number of people were standing in queues for hours and even days as well. There were worsening fuel shortages, and this had also increased social unrest in the country. And as a result, Venezuela started importing oil from Iran. While all this was happening, Iran and Venezuela were also discussing to coming up with number of other measures to overcome this oil crisis issue. Now what we have to discuss is on the implications. What is the implications? Now what we have is the victory of the Nicolas Maduro when it comes to the legislative assembly. So what is the impact when you look at the domestic level? Maduro happens to be the president. He already had control over the executive, he already had control over the political institutions, and in fact he also controlled the judiciary as well. Now what he will control is the legislative body. Since he would be controlling the legislative body, he will hold a tightened grip on power. This could weaken the image of the Guido, who happened to be one of the person projected by the global community, especially by the United States of America. With complete consolidation of power at the domestic level, this can oppose all the opposition leaders. They can be put behind bars as well, and ultimately democracy will come under threat is one of the implications. And at the same time, there might also be largest movement of the people from this particular country, and there can be refugee crisis which can be unfolding in the near future in Venezuela. So some of the negative impact would be, one is the economy will still be a problem, and at the same time people will start moving further from Venezuela to other countries. What this election also means is that the dire conditions that which has afflicted this particular region will also be a major problem for Venezuela as well as for the global community. And when it comes to India, India is also anticipating that with the next president of United States of America being Joe Biden, the sanctions that which was imposed on Iran as well as Venezuela will be comparatively reduced. So what will happen to India? Because the sanctions would be comparatively reduced, what will happen in Iran? We would be able to import the oil, and at the same time more investments can be made in Venezuela, and in the near future we would be also able to take up oil from Venezuela as well. And as a result, our imports will also start increasing, our foreign exchange will also start reducing as well, and ultimately we will have a stable relationship both with Iran as well as with Venezuela. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says not all Indian droughts are caused by El Nino. There was a study that was conducted by researchers at the Center for Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences, which happens to be from the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. According to this particular study, they go on to say that droughts in India is usually assumed to be caused by El Nino. So what is this El Nino? Basically, this is one of the warming of the Pacific Ocean which creates drought-like conditions for India. What is this El Nino? What is the impact of the El Nino to Indian monsoons has been explained in one of our videos. The link for the same will also be given in our description box, so kindly look into it. Our article discussion today would be in specific reference to what this particular study has spoken about the droughts and the monsoons. Droughts in India have been historically associated with El Nino, but apart from El Nino, there are some other atmospheric disturbances like in the North Atlantic region which is causing the drought-like condition, says this particular study. When you look into the Indian monsoon, most of the Indian monsoon is generally occurring between the June to September every year. So what exactly happens? You have the Indian farming community which relies on this particular monsoon, and if the monsoon does not happen on time or there is a deficit or a drought, it was usually assumed that it is because of El Nino. But this particular study has gone on to say that it is not only because of El Nino, but it is also because of disturbances that which is taking place in the North Atlantic region. The study has gone on to say that 10 out of 23 droughts that has taken place is because of the non-El Nino associated droughts. What exactly happens during this period? There will be a drop in the rainfall during the month of June. This will be followed by the normal amounts of rainfall in the month of August, but eventually goes on to drop after August as well. In all these cases, there have been no impact from El Nino, but some other atmospheric conditions which has resulted in the North Atlantic region has caused drought-like conditions, says this particular study. Once they come up with an elaborate analysis, we will take up this article in greater detail. As of now, all that you have to know is about El Nino, and the link for the same will also be given in our description box. Now let's look into the next article. This article says PM Uzbek President discuss Afghan projects. At a virtual summit, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Uzbek President deliberated on number of important bilateral issues between India as well as Uzbekistan. During this particular talk, both the countries strongly condemned terrorism, exports of terrorism, and they wanted to make sure that they destroy all the safe havens, networks, infrastructure, and funding channels when it comes to terrorism. So the first important factor was they spoke about terrorism and how terrorism and its issues has to be curbed. Agreements were also signed between India and Uzbekistan in couple of regions as well. This included one, the new and renewable energy, second, the digital technologies, third, cyber security and sharing of information for mutual interest. India at the same time has also confirmed the approval of $448 million line of credit for 4 developmental projects in Uzbekistan regarding the areas of road construction, sewage treatment as well as information technology. Also remember, there will be more editorials and columns in the near future, and then we will take up this analysis in an elaborate way. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about PM Vani scheme, which we have discussed in our day before yesterday CNA. So kindly look into it. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Consider the following statements with respect to ghazals. It is a genre of lyric poem, generally short and graceful in form and typically dealing with themes of love. It traces its origin to 7th century Arabic poetry. The ghazal spread into South Asia in the 12th century due to the influence of Sufi mystics. Which of the above statements is or correct? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. All the 3 statements with respect to ghazal are correct. And why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Jim Corbett National Park, which of the following statements is or correct? It is India's oldest and most prestigious national park. The park was the first to come under Project Tiger initiative. It is located in the state of Himachal Pradesh. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why? Because it is not located in Himachal Pradesh. Instead, it is located in the state of Uttarakhand. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. The Artemis program of NASA is related to detecting organic biosignatures on Mars, exploring the lunar surface, studying the asteroid Vesta, mission to investigate Jupiter's moon Europa. The answer to this is exploring the lunar surface. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following pairs river flows into. We have the Western Duina which flows into the Baltic Sea, Rhine which flows into the Adriatic Sea, or Seine which flows into the English Channel. Which of the statements given above is correct? The answer to this is 1 and 3 only. Why? Because we have the Western Duina. Yes, it flows into the Baltic Sea, but Rhine does not flow into the Adriatic Sea, but instead it flows into the Northern Sea. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given with respect to Latvia. So kindly remember, we have some of the important rivers and the seas that they flow into. We have Rhine and Elbe which enter into the North Sea, and we have Dnieper, Don which enter into the Black Sea. Danube also enters into the Black Sea. Why is it important? Because UPSC in the past has asked questions like this. Now let's look into the next practice question. If a particular plant species is placed under Schedule 6 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, what is the implication? A license is required to cultivate that plant. Now let's look into the mains practice question. The demand for repeal of laws passed by Parliament only shows a serious lapse in the management of legislative work. In the light of the statement, discuss the significance of parliamentary committees. Next question. Explain in detail the national and international ramifications as President Nicolas Maduro is poised to regain control of Venezuela's National Assembly. So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and also come up with constructive criticism. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.